All right, folks. Well, this week's a little different. We're going to be hanging out and talking about this video, and Stephen and I wanted to sit down and actually do a voiceover on this. And I posted the raw video. It's already gotten a lot of views overnight, pretty much.
Yeah.
And you went offshore last week, did some trolling for mahi, and took the GoPro with you, and had plans to take a dive and made a dive and got some great video. But we've been talking about the red snapper and the numbers. And
Yeah.
you know, we've talked about it. The Chevron trap is not a great way to do a survey of the species at all, because half these fish, and we'll talk about it when we get into the video, but there's some real big fish in the school.
Yeah, I mean, the majority of these fish you see are 15-plus pound red snapper in this video. And I don't know if you've ever looked at a Chevron trap, which is the way that we do the sampling for NOAA Beaufort, which is from, for the South Atlantic Fisheries Management Council way of doing it.
Right.
But you can't fit a 20, 30-pound mature red snapper in a Chevron trap. Of course, when you get down to Miami, which covers the Gulf Coast, they do it by hook and line captain's choice, which obviously they're catching bigger, more mature, more numbered red snapper.
Right.
And so, I mean, we've got a serious problem in the South Atlantic Fisheries Management Council, in the South Atlantic in general. I mean, these fish, as you'll see in this video, are absolutely taking over the reefs.
Now, our goal, real quick, we're gonna start with the video. We're gonna go through, and Stephen, I'm gonna let Stephen really talk about some of the species that come in. I'm gonna ask some questions. I'm gonna pretend to be dumb, which isn't hard for me.
Sure.
But I'm gonna ask some questions. But in particular, we're gonna look at the bottom. I want to talk about that bottom that you're on.
Yeah.
But also, as we start to see these red snapper swim in, I want you to call them out. The cool thing, what's it called, where the colors dissipate at the bottom? That's why it's hard to tell, these fish, because you don't see red, obviously. Red's like one of the first ones, correct?
Right, yeah, you'll lose red. There's no red at 100 feet. You'll lose red, I think in the first 33 feet or something like that. But yeah, down at 100 feet, there's no red. So unless you hit them with a flashlight, they're just going to look like a big silver snapper.
Okay, so before we get into this, so that is even to the naked eye.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Really?
yeah. So
I didn't know that.
yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah, when you're on the bottom, like if you see a big red snapper up underneath a ledge and you look up underneath there, it just looks like a giant snapper, but he looks silver.
Yeah.
Through your mask, and then you turn on your flashlight and hit him with your flashlight, he turns ruby red.
Wow. All right. Well, that's pretty cool. Well, I'll tell you what. Without further delay, if you want to, we'll get rolling on this, and let's talk about starting out. You've already made your way to the bottom, and you're down on the bottom already. And this is a typical live bottom that we find off our coast here in the Carolinas, correct?
Yeah. Now look at all those red snapper already.
Yep.
I mean, you're seeing amberjack mixed in with.
Look at that red snapper there.
Yeah,
Yep.
I mean, you're seeing amberjack mixed in on this live. This is what I would say. This is not quite a live bottom. This is more of a ledge. I call this hole in the middle ledge because.
And look at that hogfish.
Pretty hogfish, yeah. I call this hole in the middle because you've got a big piece of sand, like a donut hole, in the middle of a little maybe 2 or 3 foot ledge.
Yep.
Probably not big enough for most people to pick up on their bottom machines.
Right.
On the bottom machine, on the little boat we were on, it really didn't pick it up at all.
Really?
There was no distinguishing the bottom from that ledge. I just knew it was there.
Now, what are we looking at right here?
Lionfish, which have taken over. If you look closely, you'll see, those were 3 right there, but you'll see one after another on this ledge.
And they're pretty at the end of the day, but they do some damage.
They do. They're voracious eaters. There's another right there. Voracious eaters, but they're actually good to eat too. So if you catch them or kill them, make sure you're careful with the spines, but they're great eating.
Now, this habitat we're looking at here also is perfect for lobsters as well.
Yeah, it is. I like catching lobster on what I would call more of a live bottom. This is good habitat. There's a
turtle.
A little loggerhead turtle. Yep, that's a young one. That one's probably, I don't know, 100 pounds, 125 pounds
and
probably.
just down there chilling.
Yeah, just down there chilling. And you run into those sleeping under the ledge a lot. There he is again.
Yep, coming back in. And I mean, the space we're looking at right here just seems to me to be like a perfect spot for a lobster. The grouper, get down in there. And one thing, because of the numbers of red snapper, every single grouper that's in this video, you'll see, and I'm hoping that you guys can pick out some of these grouper. They almost seem scared to death, literally.
Well, and there's just not that many. I mean, if you go back 15, 20 years, and dove on this ledge, it would be grouper after grouper after grouper as compared to snapper. So the species it's really shifted. I mean, there used to be, a handful of snapper on ledges like this.
Did you just notice all those snapper? Did you notice that big? That's a big snapper.
That's a big one up in the water column there.
Yeah, that was a big one.
And they're schooling all the way up to the top.
Look at that.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just hanging out with you.
Yeah. I mean, we could count 200-300 on this one particular piece of bottom right here, just in the video. I mean, look at that one right there. That's a monster.
I mean, you said you saw some 30 to 40 pounders.
Yeah. There are some. I mean, look at all that. Look,
That's all red snapper.
Every single one of those are red snapper. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. This is where this video I think is going to really enlighten a lot of people. I had the conversation this week several times with people about the numbers of red snapper out there and people that have caught black sea bass in the past and 75 to 80 foot of water right now are fishing there, and they're getting worn out. What is that up top? Is that a big red snapper?
That's a big red snapper schooling all the way up.
Look at all the red snapper right there.
40 feet over the bottom. I mean, the visibility here is 60 or 70 feet.
Yep.
And so, I mean, you had red snapper 40, 50 feet into the water column. And one thing, that's interesting about this that you can clearly see, red snapper obviously don't eat ringtails or sailor's choice.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, so that tells you something as a fisherman, but it also tells you, you look around, there's not that much bait fish on this, right?
No.
I mean, the only thing there is sailor's choice or whatever you want to call them, ringtails.
Yep.
You got 4 or 5 little gag grouper that we've seen so far, not killer, not keepers.
Yep.
And red snapper, and that's really about all that's on this ledge.
And you said how many years ago if you went to this ledge? I mean, you dove this ledge before. Obviously, you didn't just pull up and go, "Oh, this is a good spot to dive." This is one of your honey holes.
Hey, there's a bull shark.
There's a bull shark, and yeah, we've talked about the bull sharks and their numbers, and how almost every bottom you dive on now has got at least one.
Yep. There's the bull shark. Yeah, that's right. I mean, the population dynamic, lots of red snapper there. The population dynamics totally shifted on these ledges. In the past, there was a lot more grouper.
Yep.
There were a handful of red snapper, but a lot more grouper. Not nearly as many amberjack. Today, it is primarily amberjack and red snapper. And
look at the red snapper there.
Yeah, they're schooling all around. Another lionfish there on the ledge. I'm not the best videographer, as you can tell. Sometimes my spear gun ends up pointing up, and sometimes it ends up.
Well, that's okay, because in a minute you're going to set it down and grab a couple spiny lobsters for dinner.
Slippers. They were actually slipper lobsters.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they were slipper lobsters, which, yeah, you'll find spots that are better for slippers and spots that are better for spinies. Slippers are better tasting, in my opinion. You see the big red, that's not one there, but there was a big red snapper that was schooling way up over.
And those are all pretty much what we're seeing there are amberjacks, not any of the Almaco jacks or any of that. That's all amberjack, isn't it?
There's amberjack and red snapper mixed into that big school going all the way to the top. Yeah. There's quite a few amberjack now, and I think that's a function of the commercial divers used to be allowed to shoot them with spear gun that had power heads, bang sticks on the end.
Bang sticks, yep.
Yeah, and
look at that red snapper.
Yeah, that's a big red. And the amberjacks, you can't kill the amberjacks anymore with power heads. You can only shoot one or kill one, bring one home. That's the limit, and that's just ridiculous. We've got to change that as well. When the 2 most abundant fish on the reef are the 2 fish that you can keep the least of, there's a problem.
There's a problem.
Yeah,
and again, science, poor science. I'm blaming it on poor science, and we've been blaming it on that for years. Since we went to Washington D.C. back in 2006 or 7, we blamed it on the science and asked for good science, and it doesn't seem that anything has changed.
No, not much. I mean, the Gulf states seem to be getting it.
Yes.
They recognized the problem just like we did, but they took a different approach, and they had governors that supported them and legislatures that supported them and congressional delegations that supported them, and they started extending their state waters. And so I think, I don't want to be exactly, or I want to be exactly right, but I think it's 12 miles that they have extended their state territorial waters. And so they
just brought in all those oil rigs. They brought in,
well, that too. I mean, they've got structure out there now where they didn't used to, but I mean, when they extended their state territorial waters, they got an opportunity to have now DeSantis just opened up, what, a 70-day red snapper season?
70-day, and then continue. Yeah, 70 days, which is June through July, nonstop, and then every weekend till October.
Yeah. And we might have a 2-day season, probably not.
Yep, and it's ridiculous. It is. And I'm hoping this is going to get spread around, shown some love, sent to the right people, and look at those. Look at the snapper there. Honestly, I've seen your old dive videos. I've seen tons of dive video from you and Kent. Mm-hmm. Look at that one. You don't see that many in any of them. And that goes back to why they were originally protected. Mm-hmm. And yes, there was, a need to have that concern. And Magnuson-Stevens Act, called for it. And it put the pressure on Safmc to make sure that they were protected. But it's become now that I think the whole Magnuson-Stevens Act needs to be redone. I think their guidelines with Safmc, and correct me because I'm no wordsmith here, but the Safmc needs to have, obviously have some type of change in their mandates that they have to uphold, because there's without a doubt not an issue with red snapper.
Yeah, what you hear nowadays from Safmc, believe it or not,
yep,
is that we catch too many red snapper.
Oh, okay.
And that's the reason why we can't have a season. We catch too many of them because there's and when you catch too many of them, there are going to be too many discards, right?
Yep.
Too many floaters, too many fish that get eaten by a shark on the way back down. That's the reason. That's how clunky, I don't know, inept's not quite the right word for a law, but that's how clunky the law is and how clunky the
wonky.
Yeah, wonky.
I like wonky, but yeah.
Wonky. The applicability of that law is that the Safmc is trying to apply. They're saying now we are catching too many red snapper off the South Atlantic coast, and therefore we can't keep any.
Yep.
And that's just a ridiculous scenario to be in.
Well, this scenario that we're laying out right here is just absolutely perfect. And there's going to be internet warriors that are going to argue both ways and this and that and everything else. But the main thing I wanted us to do with this video was to be able to show people that, and we're going to flip upside down here for a minute, folks. This is Stephen going for dinner real quick.
Oh, yeah.
But
sorry about that.
This is a perfect chance to do this. So we wanted to put this out there so that everybody who, a lot of fishermen, including myself, don't ever know what's down there. They don't get to see this. They can only say, oh, I caught 10 red snapper and, released them and this and that, and it's ridiculous. Well, we're looking at the proof in the pudding. Look at these.
Watch all these coming in. All these are red snapper coming in.
Look at it.
See,
that is unbelievable. They're there because you turned the bottom up, right?
They're there because I turned the bottom up and I grabbed that lobster. If I would have let that lobster go, 5 feet off the bottom, they would have devoured him.
Look at him.
And they probably would have taken it out of my hand if I'd have held him out there.
Yep.
They are just voracious eaters. They will eat anything and everything on a reef until it's just
all right.
gone.
What was that little thing that swam into the picture there?
That
we're upside down, but
that was a lobster. Was
it really?
Spiny slipper lobster.
Slipper lobster. Oh, you grabbed him. Okay.
And I went and picked him up.
Okay.
There's two.
Yep.
I picked up that. See, I'm going back for that second one. There. See me grab him.
Yep.
So I grabbed two there and put him on my stringer. I think you'll see his face in a minute.
Look at the snapper. Look at them. They are very inquisitive. They are trying to check everything out. But, hopefully people will share this. And that right there is what we call a bank bass, isn't it? That little that fish swimming through there. Do we call them like a sand bass or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we call them bank bass. Yeah.
Yeah, we catch the heck out of those bottom fishing, but it is really neat to actually get to look at this bottom and go through and talk about it with you. And unfortunately, when you're diving, obviously, you don't have a microphone on down there. You don't have that set up to exactly tell us what you're looking at. But here we go. We're going to flip back over, and the end of this video, I think all those snapper just hang out with you. They're waiting for a handout, and they're probably starving. I mean, when you look around, like you said, where's all the bait fish? Where's all the little schools of cigar? Oh, that's a shrimp. That's your lobster.
That was the slipper lobster.
Yep.
Yeah, no, they are going to eat and eat and eat until they run everything off the ledge, and then they're going to move, right? And that's why you'll see a ledge. They school together. That's why you'll see a ledge that ends up with 200 or 300 like this on them, because they're just schooling together. They clear out an entire piece of bottom, all the grouper, all the triggerfish, everything gets eaten up. All the bait for everything gets eaten up, and then they move.
All right, there's the other thing. No vermilion snapper.
No,
you're in 100 foot of water.
Yeah.
Not a vermilion, not a triggerfish, anywhere.
Yeah. No, that's it. There was a cubera underneath in that hole right there. There was a cubera.
Yeah, you said there was a cubera in there. Now, is this same area where you would find a moray or two in that type of area, or is that too small a ledge?
No, yeah, you'd see them in there. And there probably are. If I spent some time digging up underneath the ledge, you'd find them. There was a hogfish, a big giant hogfish there that just took off. I did not have a band. I tried to stick him with my gun, but obviously that didn't work. You couldn't see him in the video, unfortunately, because I'm a terrible videographer.
No, you did good. You actually do really good with this, because I've got some of your other work, and you did really good on this.
So I've counted, I think, maybe 2 shooter fish, other than
snapper.
If you don't count the red snapper. Yep. Two shooter fish, 1 hogfish, 1 cubera, which I didn't have a shot at because I didn't have my gun, and I wasn't about to try that without a band. So hogfish and a cubera, a small cubera.
On a bottom that's just incredible. Now let's talk about square footage of this area we're looking at. That's a cool plant or coral, whatever that was.
That's a huge snapper there, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One in front of you.
Yeah. Yeah. This is This has coral on it. This would be a reef that has some coral on it. These are cooler water corals, but they have corals. We have sea fans. We have brain coral actually up to the north a little bit off South Carolina's coast, especially as you get up closer to the scarp. We have a lot more brain coral and outcroppings up there. Angelfish like that.
Those are awesome.
Yeah, you'll see those as you get a little bit closer to the Winyah Scarp. A lot more angelfish, tropical fish. Down to the south, it's less of that stuff. I don't know why, but that's the case off South Carolina's coast.
Now you're down on this dive in 100 foot of water. This is your only dive you made, right?
Yeah, I only brought 1 tank because we were trolling that day.
So you get to maximize that dive, right? Is that how it works?
I didn't maximize that dive because I didn't have a band. Otherwise, I would have. Yeah, I would have stayed 30.
Pushed it.
Yeah, I'd have stayed 30 minutes or so if I'd had a band, and I'd have shot some fish. But since I didn't have a band, I just decided to get some video for you and move on.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's no doubt. I mean, the red snapper, proof's in the pudding here. I mean, you can see, wow, that's a monster. Yeah. That one is a monster. That's the big boy that's been swimming around on the top the whole time, isn't it? The one that just swam out the picture.
Yeah, there's a few in here that are close to 40 pounds. And look at all the jacks. Same problem, right? I mean, you got jacks and you got snapper on this ledge. That's it.
Yep.
I mean, that's 90% of the biomass on this ledge is jacks and snapper.
Oh, so I see what they've done. Instead, so they've made certain areas that they notify the fish that they can only hang out in those areas.
Right.
Is that what's happened? Okay, maybe that's how they're regulating it. But I can tell you one thing: amberjacks that want a boat, or that's a joke. I mean, if you get into the amberjack, you can't get a bait in the water.
That needs to change. That needs to change as bad as the red snapper problem needs to change. Yeah.
It does. And you and I may not be amberjack eaters. I'll say this much, that if you cut those shoulders out, you get some really good meat. But we may not be. But there are a lot of people that love eating amberjack. And
yeah, the culture changed on amberjack back in the 80s. And I mean, when commercial divers used to bring them to market a lot.
Yep.
people ate them, especially the shoulders, but the tourists eat them. The tourists eat them, and the charter boat captains love to have them there to catch. And if you can bring back one per person when you got a school of 300 on the bottom, that's ridiculous.
So what we're going to do, because I think we're nearing the end of this thing, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
What we're going to do is at the end we are going to put a link for commenting to SAFMC. You're good with that?
Yeah.
Put a link in here and allow you the option to, or the opportunity to contact your representatives at SAFMC and just ask about this video. Just ask about how they do test the population of fish, and ask why they don't use dive video, which is a no-brainer, as you see. And Stephen, you've offered it. You've offered.
Oh yeah.
You've offered to take them.
Multiple times. I'll take them. I'll link coordinates. I'll do whatever we need to do to get accurate counts of red snapper. But Chevron trap's not the way to do it anymore. That's it's just not producing the kind of accurate data or science that you really want.
Exactly. Well, we're going to get all that information up here on how to contact them as well. And it is terrible, but we do all need to have our voices heard. I was, back in 2010, 12, 14, every SAFMC meeting that I was able to go to, I was at. And you just eventually get worn out, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, I've told you the feeling. I mean, you get worn out because you feel like you're